3-hour-long Vaush video about black nationalism. Here's the thing, right? That a lot of these people, a lot of these settler colonial nationalists who essentially uphold what is little more than Nazism that one try to do. So let me, before I continue, I want to elaborate on that Nazism that one point, okay? The American state is little more than Nazism that one, okay? Let's say, hypothetically, the Nazis invaded Poland, they took over Poland, and then they decided not to do any more, right? They're just like, okay, we got Poland. We're gonna get rid of these goddamn Slavs. We're gonna get rid of these Jews, and then we're gonna take the land for ourselves. Maybe some of them are going to survive, but we'll marginalize them. Okay, let's say that's what happened. Okay, what does that sound like to you? Does it sound like European colonialism, especially of the United States? Yeah, it's the same thing. Okay, what happened in the US? Well, they did the same thing while also bringing over black slaves. Now, let's say the Nazis took over Poland, right? They managed to hold it, just as I said. And like 100 years down the line, like if you can imagine it, these Nazis who committed genocides and all this sort of stuff, who enslaved people, as the US also did, much in a very similar way, they've sort of progressed a bit. They've become more moderate, right? Like they still have the exact same sort of origins of their rule of Poland, but like they're nowhere near as fascist as they used to be. Maybe you could even call them liberals or something like that. Okay, and now they're like, well, we acknowledge that the crimes of the past of the Nazis of the past were bad, but still, you can't just deport all of these Germans who have lived here for 2 or 3 generations from Poland and give this land back to the few remaining Poles and Jews who lived there before we took it from them. That would be unjust. It would be unfair for them. For one, this is not a proposal that anyone's really making, but still, let's pretend that it is. Do you think that would maybe be a bit dishonest? Because this is exactly what's happening with people like Vaush, right? They see what happened to Native Americans, to black people in the US, and they're like, well, yeah, but that's in the past now. The fact is that the country's ours now. We live here. So the problem here isn't in this sort of original sin of mass genocide to steal this land. The problem is that you are a fascist, evil racist who wants to deport people like me, or who wants to take land from people like me, or who wants to remove power from people like me. So basically, these people like Vaush, they don't want to reckon with colonialism, honestly, but they want to try and frame the people who do want to reckon with colonialism, honestly, especially the people who have been wronged by colonialism, who have been genocided by colonialism, as irrational genociders themselves. Guys, I want you to think about this prediction that I made before I even watched the video, as we actually watch the video now, and see how incredibly accurate and predictable it all was. So let's take a look at some of this video and put it within that context of the fact that the US is essentially a state founded by Nazi-like colonialism, land theft, and genocide. Undeniably. That has since then sort of progressed supposedly to be more inclusive. But it still hasn't done anything at all to right the fact that it's a state built on very recent conquest of still extant peoples who currently live in, the majority of them, generally speaking, in terrible poverty as a specific result of this conquest and this genocide and this theft of their land. So right from the get-go, it seems he immediately tries to avoid this context and just goes straight to this question: how could you justify removing these people from the country without dealing with anything that I just said, without reckoning with it at all, without even mentioning it? So just from the very beginning, we've got massive dishonesty.
Take out the people who colonize them. There's a number of ways that could look like without actually committing genocide.
Doesn't that, I mean, how do you kick out millions of people because of their race without it being a genocide?
Take out...
Is it because of their race? And are we talking about, like, I'm interested in this lady, like, I don't know her opinions, okay? She might literally think that, like, every white person should be deported from the US, which I literally don't think that any serious person believes that, for one. If we're talking, for example, indigenous groups, show me, like, a single serious indigenous like remotely representative indigenous organization that wants all white people to be deported. They don't exist. It's basically it's like a straw man invented by people like Vaush because they don't want to reckon with the real legacy of colonialism and what decolonization actually means in practice.
So like when colonization happens, the people who colonize those places take over industries, making it so that way the people who have the most power are running those countries. So what you do to take away their power is you take the power back. You make those industries not run by the people who are colonize them. And then because they have a lack of power, those people tend to leave. That's just like one example off the top of my head.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that's a great example. Good example of that is basically every decolonization process ever, particularly in Africa. Good example is when African states became independent from colonialism. In most of these countries, there were not actually reprisals against the colonists who lived there, but they chose to leave anyway because they weren't prepared to live under a regime that didn't explicitly favor them. Okay, great example is South Africa. As soon as apartheid ended, there was this mass exodus of rich white people, and that wasn't because they were really at any risk, because the obviously you can see the rich white people who stayed are still extremely rich today. Okay, they're still at the top of society today, but the ones who left did so explicitly because they weren't going to have a complete monopoly on power anymore, and that's an excellent example of decolonization right there. Obviously, South Africa is not a state that has been decolonized perfectly remotely, not even close, but that is an example of decolonization unless of something that is a facet of decolonization.
You mean like reappropriating businesses and fairly distributing them, and then people of their own volition leave? That's fine, but that's not what I tend to see from like black separatists, right? They aren't like
black nationalism, black separatists. I mean, if we're talking about black separatists, we're not talking about specifically like a separatist would be someone who wants to separate, right? Which implies they don't want to conquer the whole of the USA for themselves, right? Black separatism and black nationalism aren't the same thing, for one. For two, separatism, if you can't understand black separatism, where it comes from, the historical position that it comes from, you're just a fucking racist dumbass. Like, if you can't see why black people might think that they'd be better off in their own state, knowing the entire history of the USA, including today, then you're just being dishonest, because Vaush is someone who talks about systemic shit. At least he gives lip service to it all the time. So if he's going to pretend that he can't understand why some black people might think that they would be better off not being ruled by a white supremacist state, I'm just going to assume that he's just a lying, dishonest piece of shit. Lying by omission.
like we should have a
And like these people try to frame black separatism as like equal to Nazism or something, as like equal to white ethno-nationalism or whatever. No, it's fucking not. Black separatism does not have its roots in any sort of idea of superiority. It has its roots in the fact that you're fucking these people over and they're sick of it and they don't want to be fucked over anymore. All of this context is taken out by this dishonest, ugly tub of fucking lard so that he can try and frame you as equal to a Nazi if you arrive at this sort of logic. Now, I don't agree with black separatism myself. I don't agree, but I understand where it comes from. I put it in its historical context. He doesn't do that. He doesn't want to understand where these movements of oppressed peoples come from, how they got to the point that they're at. He just sees them and he's like, okay, so you're a black Nazi, basically. Because he's a settler colonist nationalist.
proportional amount of industry controlled by black people in X country, and then let the cards fall where they may. There's usually an explicit intent to not live with the racial groups that are associated with their oppression.
Exactly what I just said. Vaush, why might that be? Why might those people think that? And why might that make them different to the groups that you try to equivocate them with? He's not going to question that, nor is he going to answer it.
Which is kind of what you use in your video too, right? Like, you don't say people in colonized countries should have the right to reappropriate industry and make it democratic. You say they should have a right to determine whether they want to live with their oppressor. You're giving the state the power to deport people.
Like, let's imagine a world where, like, there's some country in Africa named Africa Land. Okay, great name. The state becomes independent, and the people there are like, okay, so all the people of the colonizers' nationality, we're deporting you. You know, go back home. You've exploited us for the last 200 years. Take the fucking wealth that you've stolen from us and just go. Do I think that's an ideal solution? No. Do I completely understand it, though? Yes. We're not talking about fucking Nazi deportations of Jews or anything like that here. We're talking about people who have literally been oppressed for like 200 years being like, okay, well, sorry, but we don't trust you guys any, we kind of don't trust you anymore. We don't trust you to live alongside us. Fact of the matter is, if you go to a country, you steal its fucking resources, you explicitly oppress the people, the native people from that country for generations and generations. You can't be fucking surprised when they don't want you there anymore. And honestly, it's a fucking miracle that in practically every single place in Africa and other places where this happened, they weren't deported. They left of their own volition simply because they weren't prepared to live in a society where they were equal to the native people. Like, there's a big difference between looking at something and being like, okay, I think this is ideal, I think this is what should always happen, and looking at something that happened or like an idea of what should happen and being like, okay, well, so I don't agree with that, but I can completely understand why someone might arrive at that conclusion. Like, why people who have been oppressed might arrive at the conclusion that, that we're just not willing to risk living with these people who have spent 200 years oppressing us. The way that people like Vaush, big, fat, ugly, liberal pieces of shit, spin this is as, well, like, the problem here isn't with that oppression and the fact that these people have come to a very rational conclusion that they don't want to live alongside their oppressors, that they don't want to risk being dominated by their oppressors once more. They take that and they try to spin it as, this is equal to Nazism. It's only equal to Nazism if you believe in Nazi conspiracy theories that Germany was secretly run and ruined by Jews or something like that. If you don't believe in that, it's not even remotely the same thing.
Kill them when that's the language you use.
My point is that the people who colonize those people, if the people who are there and they live in their own country don't want to live with people who are colonized, they should have the right to determine if they want to live with those people or not. And I think that could look like a number of things. And my point is that it doesn't actually have to always look like genocide. And the way that you're painting it is just comparing it to white nationalism. And so my point is that you can critique these things. You don't have to agree with these things.
I mean, she's literally just completely right. As I said, there's different methods of decolonization, different views of decolonization. My view would be that the people who are already there obviously should be able to stay. Just that, like, the sort of structure of society needs to be decolonized in a very sort of radical, revolutionary way. There's that. And then there's, like, the more radical ideas, which go from, let's genocide all these white people, which no one outside of fucking Twitter believes in. It's 14-year-olds on Twitter. There's that. And then there's, like, separatism, which is, well, we'd rather go it alone, give us some land for ourselves or make our own state there or whatever, which I'm also against, but I understand where it comes from and why it's so fundamentally different to, like, like people in Texas saying, oh, we want Texas to be independent so we can deport all the damn, like, mixed race indigenous people and all the black people or whatever. Okay, it's not the same fucking thing as black people who are a historically oppressed group who were brought to the US as slaves, who are still being oppressed today, saying, well, we don't trust you guys to rule over us, so we'd like to have our own state for ourselves. Okay, they're not the same fucking thing.
But you can talk about that sentiment without calling it the same thing as white nationalism. That's my point of the two videos.
But I've talked to white nationalists, and they kind of talk exactly like how you talk.
Oh my God. He literally cannot engage with anything that I'm saying here. The things that I'm saying here would literally cause him to explode on the spot and probably leave like 5 Big Macs, the remains of the 5 Big Macs that he ate for fucking breakfast, strewn across his fucking wall. Unbelievable stuff, man. He cannot engage, so what he tries to do is shift the conversation to, you are the same as a white nationalist, you are the same as a white nationalist, you are the same as a white nationalist. If you make my liberal white American settler feelings, if you make me feel uncomfortable, you are a white nationalist. You're exactly the same.
Most of them aren't bold enough to say, yeah, I want to genocide or deport all the non-white people. Usually it's like, yeah, we want to restrict immigration from X countries, and we want to pay people to leave, and we want to incentivize white power in our country. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it seems like the underlying logic here is the same, right? Whether the grievances are legitimate or not, and I want to make a clear distinction here. Black people in South Africa have been oppressed by white people. White people in America are not oppressed by Jews or whatever. So obviously, in terms of correctly identifying past modes of oppression, there's a huge difference. But the feelings of persecution are the same.
The feelings are the same. So Nazis believe that they were persecuted, but they weren't actually persecuted. Black people believe they are persecuted and they weren't actually persecuted, okay? Does he not understand the difference between legitimate and illegitimate grievances? How can you make a comparison in here and say, you sound the same to my fragile little white liberal ears, but you're actually totally different, and not just realize he's refuting himself in real fucking time. Oh, this hurts to watch. This is why I don't stream anymore.
Do feel persecuted, and as a product of that, the language they use comes out really similar to this.
I mean, this is like saying that the Nazis appropriated class rhetoric, like the rhetoric of class struggle. Therefore, you can't talk like a leftist anymore because you might sound like some Nazi sometimes. It's so fucking stupid. He's so fucking dumb.
We should have the right to determine a space for our people, a right to choose our homeland. So,
wow, man, if we were going through the era of decolonization, Vaush would be against it. He'd be like, should Algeria really be free from French rule? Because I don't really like the way they're talking about this. They're saying that Algeria should be a country for Algerians. They're saying that Algeria shouldn't be dominated by French people. They're saying that Algeria shouldn't be ruled from France by the French. This really makes me uncomfortable. This sounds a lot like the Nazis when they said that Germany shouldn't be controlled by a Jewish cabal of billionaires or whatever. Do you know what the difference might be there? There was no cabal of Jews, Vaush. Whereas French colonialism is the most real thing you could ever possibly have imagined. Do you think that might be what the difference is, Vaush? Do you think the problem is that one is a conspiracy theory and one isn't?
the language to me comes off really, really similar to white nationalist stuff, especially when we're dealing in like really ambiguous terms like they should have a right to live free of the oppressors. I mean, how can a person be an oppressor because of their race? Did all the millions of white people in South Africa like individually oppress?
Communism is based.
They literally did. They literally did. He's going to bat for white people in South Africa now. I am fucking dead. Oh, why do these people not understand the difference between Nazis saying we're going to kill all the Jews in Europe because the Jews are like have a secret cabal and they are controlling our affairs and ruining our country, blah blah blah, and an indigenous person saying, well, you guys kind of came here and killed my ancestors and stole our land. So we kind of think that this state that you've created is total bullshit and needs to be dismantled. And maybe we should have some control of our own affairs because we don't really trust you to control them for us anymore. It hurts.
Black people there? It just seems weird to be retaliatory in that way.
So it's not that every single person is necessarily an oppressor. The thing that people are talking about with racism comes down to the system that people are part of. For example, I'm adopted and my dad is white.
Like, why does she need to explain systems to a guy who, with 373,000 subscribers, who considers himself like a leftist guru? Why does this need to be explained?
He's a European immigrant, actually. And he might not have been a part of the people who have enslaved Black people or descendants of those people, but he's still profiting off of a racist system. And there needs to be some sort of disempowerment of those people as far as power and racist structures in order for there to be equality. So that's the point that I'm getting at. And the reason why I'm being vague is because if you look at different countries who have decolonized themselves, you have like all these different ways.
Wait. Okay, so the self-determination argument is what white nationalists make. Is Vaush going to make like an anti-self-determination argument? Like, just because white nationalists appropriate self-determination doesn't mean that it's invalid. What is wrong with these people? Why is the American left just explicitly fucking colonialist?
What white nationalists ask for, right there. Self-determination is the dog whistle that they use when talking.
Self-determination is the dog whistle of the Hong Kong protesters too. It's the dog whistle of fucking Uyghurs. But I guess it's okay there because it's China. Dog whistle. Self-determination. He's I'm dying. Help me. I can't watch.
Talking about ethno-states. This is what I mean
about it. They're talking about self-determination in the context of other people being inferior inherently. They're talking about self-determination in the context of wanting to have their own state because they're looking down on other people.
Haven't you listened to Richard
Spencer? People who are oppressed.
Haven't you listened to Richard Spencer? Who cares? Doesn't have to do with anything. How How do you not know what self-determination is? How do you not have an incredibly good understanding of self-determination? Is you have 400,000 fucking YouTube subscribers. Why is this the best that you guys can give us? Oh my God, it hurts.
I've heard of plenty of
Richard Spencer doesn't
people
think
who are
the other
oppressed
races are inferior.
need to have
He just
their own
thinks that
self-determination. And the reason why they're oppressed is because they don't have their own self-determination. The reason why I'm using that term is because it looks so different in every country. And I think people need to have the space to talk about that and to figure it out without being called a white nationalist.
So again, I don't have a problem with talking about it. It's just a lot of your language
like you're
comes off. Wait, can we please?
Doing it.
A lot of your language comes off as Nazi. Is that what he's saying? He thinks that self-determination is a white nationalist dog whistle. This is the level of engagement that the American left has with decolonization, has with colonialism in general, has with like self-determination, which also isn't necessarily solely a concept to do with colonialism. Like, it's just such a fundamental lack of knowledge that the only time he has such a little of an idea of what it is that he immediately associates self-determination with white nationalism because it's the only time that he's ever heard the term. Unbelievable.
Right now,
Wait,
you're like,
on.
you're a white nationalist.
I'm literally talking about it right now.
Richard
But
Spencer said this and
hold
that.
on,
It's like,
please.
I know.
So when you're saying we have a right to discriminate against this racial group to preserve the self-determination of our people,
discriminate against this racial group like, you see the way that he's trying to frame it, right? He's trying to divorce everything. He's trying to divorce this from all of the power structures. He's trying to divorce this from the history of colonialism that resulted in the way that things are today. And he's simply trying to frame it as discrimination against a racial group, that has no material basis or historical basis whatsoever, simply to do with their race. Nothing more, nothing less. It's only because of the color of their skin. It's unfucking believable. He went in this knowing that he knows nothing about what he's talking about and just decided, okay, I'm going to try and frame this as nothing more than this person is a Nazi from the very beginning. I'm just going to incredibly dishonestly frame everything in terms of like white nationalism and Nazism, etc. And that's it.
yeah, that does sound a little white nationalisty. So you'll have to forgive me for
That does sound a little white nationalisty. You'll have to forgive me for me being a complete fucking ignorant moron. How does anyone watch this? Do I need to make a video explaining the basics of fucking colonialism, man?
It's not to preserve.
Please.
It's not just to preserve the self-determination. Okay, sorry. Go on. Go ahead. Go on.
I do not think that the road to decolonization and the road to ethnic
You don't think about decolonization at all.
discrimination
Come on, give me a fucking
are
break.
necessarily the same roads. I think you can decolonize a place without using it to justify racially exclusionary behavior.
This is another thing. He's trying to frame decolonization as like being racially exclusive. It's not. It's completely based in material reality. Okay, simple fucking fact. Let's say, for example, we have a country in Africa that was colonized by white people. Okay, why are the white people there? Because they colonized that country. That's why. That's a material basis.
Attention, Westerners.
So when you like enact policies specifically directed at these white people to benefit the black people who originally lived there, you're not doing it because they're white. You're doing it because of colonialism. Because it's a simple fact that they are there because of colonialism. That they have the advantages that they have because of these systems of oppression. But Vaush is trying to frame it as if they are being discriminated against. As if, policies are being enacted against them specifically because of race, the color of their skin, divorced from any material and economic realities, when that's simply not the case at all. It's the same reason why, saying that the reason why black people in the US are oppressed today, worse off, it has nothing to do with them simply being black. It has to do with the fact that they were kidnapped from Africa and brought over to the USA. There's black migrants from Africa who are, come from the upper classes in that country. They haven't experienced any of that oppression. They might have disadvantages in their everyday life. They might experience discrimination, but their oppression is different. Maybe they were oppressed by colonization in Africa, but they haven't been oppressed in the same way as black African American people have. right? The people who were taken over as slaves have. So we're talking about oppression based in material reality. And in the case of like white people in Africa, we're talking about people who have gained what they have by colonizing and by upholding these systems of oppression of the native black people. And Vaush is divorcing that from any material and economic and historical context. So just try and frame it as a simple matter of like, it's because of the color of their skin. And that's not the fucking case. Okay? This is what it, like, Vaush doesn't read. He doesn't care about any of this at all. He's just a fucking idiot who relies on these sorts of really easy to see through tricks to try and make it out to his incredibly stupid audience that he's winning.
Which is the reason, which is, by the way, by definition, what black separatism is. If it wasn't black separatism, if it wasn't racially exclusionary, then you could just say, we want
Why is it racially exclusionary?
to build a democracy and make sure power is equally distributed among the people. But that's not.
You see, Vaush? Vaush is basically saying that he thinks the USA is fine the way it is because that trying to redistribute power equally among the people. How has that gone for the last 200 fucking years, Vaush? Not very good, has it? You think that might be a reason why people don't trust this system and want to dismantle it or, you know, separate and rule themselves?
Not what you're talking about. You're talking about discouraging, and that's a very generous term, by the way, one racial group from continuing to live in your society. And it never just ends, by the way, at a...
Discouraging, like... Let's talk about the material realities of what Vaush is advocating for with that statement, okay? Vaush is advocating for white people living in Africa or any other place that has been directly colonized by white people with a still extant indigenous population to be able to hold and retain all of the advantages that they have and maintain the systems that they have maintained, but perhaps in a more sort of obscured way. That's what he's saying there. That's what he wants. You can't spin it any other way. Just explicitly against any sort of decolonization measures that specifically targets the group that did the colonization, the group that maintains, that still has all the advantages. You know, it still does tons of the oppression, still in many cases maintains systems that advantage themselves. You can't do anything about that because then you're just a Nazi racist. It hurts. It hurts. He's an incredibly dumb person.
You know,
What this reminds me of is Vaush arguing against veganism, by the way. It's another great example of how these debate morons just argue from like a position of like whatever they feel makes them uncomfortable is wrong, and they will defend it to the death no matter how stupid it makes them look. So it's like, I eat meat, ergo, my eating meat cannot be wrong, ergo, I'm going to argue in favor of eating meat, and no matter how stupid it makes me look. Same thing here. I am a white settler to the US. Ergo, it makes me uncomfortable that some people look at people like me and see us as oppressors, which is completely rational in any sort of material or historical, economic, systemic analysis. Ergo, any sort of talk about me and people like me as an oppressor makes me inherently uncomfortable. Ergo, I need to compare these people with Nazis, because to me that's basically what they feel like. This is like the worst thing that I could ever possibly imagine is people like me being even reminded of where our power comes from.
Bought out their territory and they just leave. When a colonizing group,
does.
When a
This literally
colonizing
happened
when a
in Kenya.
colonizing group lives
They
in
got the white people out and they were like, good. They got the people who colonized them out and they were like, great.
do you think it's
That's where
interesting
it
that you
stopped.
referred to them as white people before you referred to them as colonizers? It's
The white people were the colonizers. That's the relevant thing. The white people were the colonizers. Like, great example here. So after the Cuban Revolution, the Cubans offered American bourgeoisie compensation for their means of production. Okay? And an analogous argument here would be Vaush saying, wait, why did you just say that they offered the Americans this instead of the foreign bourgeoisie? It sounds like you only hate Americans. In this specific fucking context, the colonizers are white. That's why she's saying white people. Colonizers can be anyone, obviously. God, he's so stupid and so ugly and eats so many hamburgers.
speaks to your priorities somewhat.
No, because white people have what? Who are the colonizers in this world? Yeah, there are other people who have done it, but look at
Are
all
all
the
the white
places that have been
people-
colonized.
Are all
Africa,
the white people
India.
colonized?
Yes, all white people living in fucking Africa or in America or whatever are colonizers. Yes. 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 You are. Simple.
America.
Are all the white
No,
people
they're-
colonizers in Kenya?
White people are part of colonialism.
Wait,
Are all the white people colonizers in Kenya? Yes. How do you think? Well, I mean, I guess not, right? It's totally possible that some white people moved to Kenya, you know, got like a visa to live there from the Kenyan government. Those people wouldn't be colonizers. But those, you know, who trace their roots to before Kenyan independence, before power was handed over to majority black people, those are colonizers. Yes. Very simple. It's so fucking easy to understand. What's wrong with this fucking dipshit?
Colonizers are
you're
white
doing
people.
it again. Wait, hold on. So
Wait,
are all,
she's doing it again? Oh, he's gonna do a comparison to white nationalists here. Watch.
the white people in South Africa colonizers?
Yes. Where do you think they fucking came from, dude? Apart from that tiny group that I just made a distinction from, it's like yes.
Gosh, I am so sorry that I misspoke. I meant the white colonizers. I didn't mean to say all white people. My bad. Oops, I guess I'm a racist.
It is an interesting term of phrase. It'd be a difference, for example, like how you
I think it's
refer to
interesting
criminality.
that you don't get why people refer to white people as colonizers when white people are the ones colonizing the world. I think that's interesting.
Generally
that you don't get
speaking,
that.
the people who are, no, I do get it. I just think it makes you insufferable and sociologically ignorant.
Sociologically ignorant? Dude, I've never seen anyone more sociologically ignorant than this guy. Unbelievable.
Now I'll ask you again, when it comes to
Okay.
South Africa, what do you think of the 6 million white people who live in that country? Do you think the black people, who are by far the majority, have a right to remove the white population?
Do you think that if that had happened, that it would have been wrong? Let's say the white people in South Africa had to be fucking forced at gunpoint, basically, to end apartheid, okay? And by some fucking miracle, the black people there didn't want them to go. They didn't say that you need to leave. They were like, okay, we're gonna create a state where everyone's equal, basically. Now they did it poorly because black people still aren't equal to white people in South Africa, not even close. But that was kind of the idealist stance behind it. Now, let's imagine a different world where white people did all the same thing and the black people were more radical and they were like, we want you guys to get the fuck out of here. We're not just going to forgive you for centuries and centuries of oppression for enforcing apartheid upon us for 100 years. We want you gone. Would that be the same thing as Nazism? No. Not even fucking close, man. It's truly unbelievable. And do I think that would be an ideal solution? Also no. Is that what I would want? Also no. Can I understand it? Abso-fucking-lutely, yes. You take over a land by force, you genocide its fucking people, you keep them as a legal underclass for like more than 100 years, and then when they're like, okay, enough, get the fuck out of here, you start grasping at fucking straws and painting yourself as the victim? No. Fuck you. Yeah, it's the same thing as saying like the Nazis who settled in Poland. The Nazis who settled in the rest of Eastern Europe should have been allowed to stay there, and that there's something morally wrong with deporting them. They were literal settlers implanted there by a conquering population. It's literally illegal, technically, even in liberal international law, to implant a population in conquered territory. And by any measure, these settler colonial states are conquered territory. If we apply these laws in any sort of consistent way, your presence in the USA is technically illegal. There's a lot of philosophical questions about like, well, how long can you live in a place before it's no longer okay for people to be like, hey, this is, it's wrong what you did to us, get the fuck out of here. How long can you be disconnected from the original colonization or whatever before it's no longer your business, before it's no longer your sin? Those are questions that I don't have the answer to. But I can absolutely understand why some oppressed people answer those questions with what may seem like an extreme option. And if Vaush is trying to compare this to white nationalism, he's just a fucking racist. It's that simple. He's a little uncomfortable white liberal who's being made uncomfortable by the obvious injustice of conquest. He is a conqueror, right? If you don't like it, you're a conqueror, Vaush. I'm also a conqueror And I'm not using that in a positive respect. I'm using that in sort of a legal sort of respect, right? In sort of a moral respect. We are conquerors. We conquered the land that we live on. And that's not a just way to gain the right to residency, to gain like the right to a place that you live in. And that's a problem that needs to be rectified in some way, okay?
I personally don't think that would be a good idea, but I do think that
Do they have a right
it's
to?
up to yeah, I think so. I think they have the right to discuss what to do about that. And if that
see.
means that they have to remove the people, then I think that they would have a right to do that. But I think that would be really harsh. And I think that they're not even going to do that.
Out of curiosity, do you know how many Jews died in the Holocaust?
Oh my God, what the fuck does that have to do with anything you he just sat there the entire time being like, no matter what she says, I'm going to reply with a random Nazi comparison again. I'm not going to engage at all. I'm just going to go back to the fucking Nazis. This guy is the dumbest motherfucker you could ever imagine.
I think 6 million.
Do you know what Hitler tried to do with them before the Holocaust?
Why did he do that? Because of a fucking conspiracy theory about them oppressing Germans, which was not true. And they also weren't colonists, so what the fuck is the relevance?
Began.
Oh.
See, this is what I'm saying. Like
Answer the
me being
question.
like people should have the right to self-determination.
Answer the question. The question is bullshit. Wait, I didn't even have the browser up. Fuck, man. This just makes me angry. This makes me not want to do reacts anymore, man.
Question.
You are literally comparing me to Hitler and Nazis right now.
Answer the question. What did he try to do before he killed them? That
I'm
wasn't
not
the
going
first
to
plan.
answer the question because you
Yeah.
literally are proving my point.
He tried
Because
to remove
you literally
them.
can't. You did Jewish people colonize Germany?
You keep saying that. I don't think it's relevant. Jewish people in Germany.
The
Wait,
context
hold on.
of
wait, hold on. Wait,
colonialism
Jewish
is
people.
really relevant.
Jewish
It's why
people.
we're talking about
Jewish
this.
people in
Okay,
Germany.
I'm not saying that people should just
Oh my
like
God.
remove anyone. I'm
Jewish
saying that
He's the one saying, oh my God, here? He's the one acting exasperated here. Are you fucking kidding me? How does anyone
Communism is based.
watch this and think that he's coming from even remotely a position that makes any sense at all?
People
that the
in
context
Germany,
of
Jewish people
colonialism
in
is
Germany
what's
were innocent, regular people. And white people in South Africa are innocent, regular people.
What? 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 What the fuck? 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 What the fuck?
Attention, Westerners.
Did he just compare white South Africans to Jews, to German Jews? I have to make an actual main channel video about this. This is absurd. I have to. There's no way. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
The seeds of colonization are a sociological phenomena that runs back hundreds of years. It's not like there are
That's such a meaningless fucking
6 million
statement.
people who are born white and thus instantly become colonizers.
They became colonizers when they colonized South Africa. Literally, it's as I said earlier, it's a material economic relation. It's a material, social, economic, political relation. It's nothing to do with them being born. Everything to do with where they were born, why they were born there, what they
Communism
inherited,
is
how
based-
they inherited it, who they oppress in order to inherit it, what systems maintain their inheritance. Exactly what I said earlier. He's trying to divorce all of this to make the completely invalid comparison with the Nazis.
You are doing exactly what I accuse people like you of doing.
Do you think you have a... Oh my God, he's so stupid. He's just... This is like talking to like your average like Steven Crowder type person. I imagine it would be similar to this. He's just so stupid. It's impossible to engage with someone this stupid.
You're essentializing racial differences and turning them into grievances that state power can be used to
But
solve.
the issue is that there's like
Now-
still a power dynamic of white people running South Africa.
Okay, but
how
this
do
is,
people
again,
who are
so-
colonized get their power
so
back?
this-
Obviously, I'm not saying they should do genocide, but people should be able to have a conversation about what to do to have their own self-determination,
This
to be able
essential-
to live their
you're do-
lives without colonial
you're just-
oppression,
you're
live their lives
speed
without
running.
racism.
You're speed running all the talking points that I hear from
Speed running. Why always the fucking gamer analogies?
white nationalists.
He just... All that he's doing is repeating the same thing over and over, engaging with nothing. Repeating the exact same fucking thing over and over. You are a white nationalist. 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 zero engagement, zero nothing. He's so dumb. And I'm saying that so often that this video is not going to be monetizable. He's just so fucking dumb. It's painful, man. It hurts.
If you want to address the power difference, you can do that without genocide. You removing...
Okay, she literally said all that already. She said she's against that. She said she doesn't want to do that.
all the white people
No one's talking about genocide.
Is not the only way of fixing that problem. You know that, right? And there are, and by the way,
communism
I mean, you know
is based.
Saying, Vaush, oh my God, that is actually what I'm trying to say. That there's like different. I'm not saying that people should just commit genocide. I'm saying there's so many different responses to colonization.
You
and people
said they would have the right
to
to
determine
remove
what
them.
to do.
I mean, how is that any different from like the US having the right to remove people? How is that any different from any nation state deporting people? I mean, it is very different, by the way, because we're talking about literal fucking oppressors, especially in the context of South fucking Africa. Ugh.
You said they would have the right to remove them.
I think if they decided like, hey, we don't want the people who colonized us to stay here, let's figure out a way to like have them move or something like that. I think that'd be very harsh. Again, that's not something that I would agree with, but I think the people who are colonized should have the self-determination to decide what to do about the people who have colonized them.
Okay, so out of curiosity,
and I think you're also like,
do you think that Saudi Arabia has a right to throw gay people off rooftops?
What does that have to do with anything? Are gay people colonizers now? Have gay people colonized South Africa for the last 200, 300 years? Have gay people put themselves into positions of power and created systems to maintain that power? Have they committed genocide? What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything, you fucking idiot? You complete fucking moron. He looks stupid and he is as stupid as he looks. Oh, I can't do it much more. I'm just going to finish this section and I might check out like one more talking point elsewhere, and I just can't do more than that. Or my voice is gonna crack and I won't be able to do the rest of the stream.
It's their culture. Do they not have a right to self-determine their moral system with regards to
see, like gay people are oppressed though.
Wait, hold on. No, they're not. Gay people in Saudi Arabia are just a product of Western degeneracy that feeds in through global media. In reality, it's actually a product of white international cultural bias that is infesting the people in Saudi Arabia. So given they're basically a symptom of Western degeneracy, do you think they not have a right to address that in whatever way they...
Stupid. Like, you notice he's completely ignoring everything that she says and everything that I've said. Now, I'm obviously not debating someone live, so for me, it's a lot easier for me to explain these ideas in a way that is sort of more thorough than the way that she's been able to explain them, right? But he's ignoring basically the same sort of points that I'm making. She's not developing them as much as I am, but she is making very similar points to me. He's ignoring them to just make the exact same argument every time. You are like the Nazis. This is exactly the same as throwing gay people off roofs. He's so dumb. How can anyone watch this and think this person isn't a fucking moron?
I think is most culturally effective?
I think that's not really what we're talking about.
Your arguments are used by every tyrannical group around the world.
No, they aren't. Okay, let's go forward a little bit, see what other dumb shit he says.
Irrelevant.
Because, and I'll say it once more, and this is why you should really check your racism, my friend, that white people and colonizers aren't the same group.
Oh my God, she already explained why she's talking about white people in this case, because they are the colonizers, as I explained too. He just keeps going back to the exact same fucking talking points. It's, you are a Nazi, you are a racist, you are these, he's no different to your average fucking right-winger. Honestly, he's worse than your average fucking right-winger. This is like the final boss of idiotic, like unthinking, zero book reading, even of their own theory liberalism.
People who are white in South Africa are regular humans who are dead, who live their lives.
And who also benefit from a system that was specifically set up to benefit them hundreds of years ago and specifically set up to oppress the indigenous people hundreds of years ago. Are you going to talk about that? No.
They are not physical.
Colonization is still happening. Like
physical.
America
They are, yes,
It's
the
still a
concept
colony.
of colonization is happening. You do not then get to attack 6 million ethnic minorities in a country.
The concept of colonization is still happening. If the concept of colonization is happening, that means that people are colonizing. Oh, it hurts.
That's what you're doing. You're taking a sociological problem and making it a race problem, which is, by the way, what conservatives do to black people.
No, she's not. All of this is grounded in materialism, politics, history, society. It's not a race problem. The only reason why we're talking about white people is because white people happen to be the colonizers in this case, and in most cases.
People, you can take a look at the statistics.
I'm not
Hold on.
Hold on.
Let me
okay,
finish,
fine,
please.
Go on.
Conservatives do this all the time. Black on black crime is wildly disproportional in this country. I recognize this as a sociological.
This is so stupid. This has nothing to do with anything. He's so fucking dumb. Check the top comment on the video. Okay. Unsettling how might resemble the alt. No, they don't.
Phenomenon.
What does
But
black on black
conservatives-
crime have to do with it?
You just said you'd let me finish. Maybe you'd understand if you.
Their own autonomy.
So
right now.
this is where I'm starting to wonder if you're educated enough to have this conversation.
Holy shit. This uneducated, unread, ignorant, fat, ugly piece of shit has the gall to say that to anyone. Fucking God, man. I can't watch this anymore. I'm sorry. I think I've already said everything that needs to be said. Because it's obviously just going to go repeating the exact same shit. This guy thinks that he's educated on colonization, that he's the one who's doing a socioeconomic material analysis, when he's specifically avoiding doing that in order to frame the Nazis as equal to colonize people seeking self-determination. These people are fucking dumb. They're not leftists. They're barely even liberals at this point. Even liberals acknowledge. I mean, self-determination is a liberal principle, basically. The right to self-determination is a liberal principle. You want to learn some history of the right to self-determination? We're not talking about some radical black separatist bullshit. We're talking about a liberal concept enshrined in international law by the UN. It seems like a fairly decent description of its history. So, initially conceived, the right to self-determination belonged to the population or people of a fixed territorial entity, specifically peoples oppressed by a colonial power, okay? The Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples and the jurisprudence of the International Court of Justice emphasize the connection between the right to self-determination and peoples of colonized territories. The International Court of Justice and the UN are now ethno-nationalists. They are Nazis. They are Hitler. In this context, the right to self-determination is externally exercised by secession from a colonial power to form a new state. The rights of colonial peoples to external self-determination is well established in international law. This is Nazism. This is white nationalism that I'm reading here. I can't believe this. More recently, it has been postulated that the right to self-determination can be exercised internally as well. Internal self-determination allows people a broader control over their political, economic, social, and cultural development while stopping short of secession. This is what people are mostly talking about with regards to decolonizing the US, by the way. And I emphasize broader control here. That doesn't mean that you just have a state that throws these people scraps and that does performative things to make it seem like it cares about them. It means fundamentally reforming or even abolishing the state entirely. A reformation of a state into a sort of more decolonized state would be Bolivia, for example, which essentially reformed the Bolivian state, renamed it, gave it a new constitution entirely, etc., to center indigenous people. Without, have white people been deported from Bolivia? No. Indigenous communities, peoples and nations are those which, having a historical continuity with pre-invasion and pre-colonial societies that developed on their territories, consider themselves distinct from other sectors of the societies now prevailing in those territories or parts of them. They form at present non-dominant sectors of society and are determined to preserve, develop, and transmit to future generations their ancestral territories and their ethnic identity as the basis of their continued existence as peoples in accordance with their own cultural patterns, social institutions, and legal systems. This is a legal analysis by the UN Special Rapporteur, Martinez Corvo. Okay? For Vaush, this is like ethno-nationalism or something. But did you know that Hitler said the same thing about Germans based on a ridiculous conspiracy theory that scapegoated Jews for all of Germany's problems? And that had absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever? Well, that means you're basically the same as a Nazi. In summation, Vaush is a complete moron with no idea what he's talking about. It's embarrassing to watch him. It makes me feel secondhand embarrassment. If you don't feel embarrassed watching this, there's something wrong with you, and I don't think you're intelligent. You're really intelligent enough to do your own sort of critical analysis and critical consumption of media. That's that. Vaush is an idiot. Everything about that just made me angry. It was so fucking stupid.